September 19th, 1944, dawn breaks over Aracourt, France. Through the thick morning fog, Lieutenant Edwin Leiper peers down from Hill 246, his hand resting on the cold steel of his M18 Hellcat tank destroyer. 30 feet away, barely visible through the mist, the unmistakable silhouette of a German Panther tank emerges from the tree line. 5 minutes. That's all it takes. 5 German tanks of the 113th Panzer Brigade lie burning in the French countryside. 1 American M18 destroyed. The mathematics are brutal, undeniable. But what Lieutenant Leiper doesn't know, what no American tanker could know that foggy September morning, is that 300 miles away, in a captured testing facility outside Berlin, German engineers are about to confront a truth that will shatter their understanding of armoured warfare. The vehicle they're examining isn't supposed to exist. It violates every principle of German tank design philosophy. Paper-thin armour, an open-topped turret that leaves the crew exposed to grenades and snipers, a gun that can't penetrate a Panther from the front. And yet, this ungainly American machine, this M18 Hellcat, is systematically destroying the finest tanks Germany has ever produced at ratios that make no tactical sense. How does a tank destroyer with armour so thin that 30 caliber bullets can penetrate it achieve the highest kill-to-loss ratio of any American armoured vehicle in World War II? The answer lies not in the metal, but in a revolution in thinking that American industry understood and German engineering fatally underestimated. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. December 1941, Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. The temperature hovers at 28 degrees as Major General Andrew D. Bruce watches another prototype tank destroyer fail its mobility trials. This is the 8th design in 6 months, each one too slow, too heavy, or too complicated. Bruce's frustration isn't academic, it's existential. Across the Atlantic, German panzer divisions are demonstrating a new kind of warfare that American military doctrine is completely unprepared to counter. The numbers from Europe paint a terrifying picture. In the Battle of France, German armour punched through Allied lines with surgical precision. In North Africa, Rommel's panzers are running circles around British positions. The Wehrmacht has perfected a tactical philosophy: concentrate overwhelming armoured force at a single point, achieve breakthrough, then exploit deep into enemy rear areas before defensive forces can react. American military planners, including Leslie McNair, commander of Army Ground Forces, understand that the traditional response static anti-tank guns positioned at the front lines is obsolete. By the time you see German tanks, they've already broken through. By the time you reposition anti-tank guns, they've already exploited 50 miles into your rear. You need something different, something that can move faster than German armour, concentrate force more quickly, and hit from unexpected angles. Bruce's vision is radical for 1941. Abandon the idea of matching German tanks in armour and firepower. Instead, build something so fast it can outmaneuver them. A vehicle that treats speed not as a luxury, but as armour itself, the ability to be somewhere else before enemy guns can traverse. The concept violates every instinct of military engineers trained to build survivable fighting vehicles. But Bruce isn't building survivable vehicles. He's building tactical mobility incarnate. The T-70 prototype arrives at Aberdeen in April 1943. Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Evans, assigned to the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, examines the machine with the skeptical eye of a professional soldier who has seen too many promising prototypes fail under combat stress. The specifications seem almost suicidal. Maximum armour thickness, 1 inch on the front, ½ an inch on the sides, an open-topped turret. Weight, 17.5 tons, nearly 40% lighter than a Sherman tank. But when Evans climbs into the driver's seat and the Continental R975 radial engine roars to life, something becomes immediately apparent. This machine moves like nothing he's experienced. 0 to 30 miles per hour in 11 seconds. Top speed, 55 miles per hour on roads, 35 miles per hour cross-country. For comparison, a Sherman tank maxes out at 25 miles per hour, a German Panther at 28. The testing protocol at Aberdeen is methodical, designed to break equipment before it breaks soldiers. The T-70 undergoes acceleration trials, endurance runs, mechanical stress testing. Engineers measure torque curves, transmission efficiency, suspension travel. Armourers test the 76mm M1A1 gun for accuracy, rate of fire, and armour penetration. Every component is pushed beyond design specifications to identify failure points. Master Sergeant William Harrison supervises much of the weapons testing. 20 years in the Army has taught him that sophisticated equipment looks impressive until it encounters mud, dust, mechanical stress, and 19-year-old crews who learned to drive on a farm tractor 3 months ago. The Hellcat's external silhouette concerns him immediately. It's tall, conspicuous, a target that screams, "Shoot me," to any German gunner within 2,000 yards. But the gunnery trials produce results that override his aesthetic objections. The 76mm gun, while unable to penetrate heavy German armour from the front, delivers devastating performance against side and rear armour at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards. The high-velocity armour-piercing ammunition achieves muzzle velocities of 2,900 feet per second. At 800 yards, the typical engagement range in European combat, it can punch through 3 inches of armour plate angled at 30 degrees. More importantly, the gun's high-velocity ballistics mean flat trajectories. A Hellcat gunner doesn't need to calculate elaborate elevation adjustments for targets between 500 and 1,500 yards. Point, aim, fire. The projectile goes where you point it with minimal drop compensation. For tank destroyers designed to engage quickly and relocate, this simplified ballistics profile translates to faster first-round hits. The maintenance trials reveal design decisions that distinguish American automotive engineering from German precision. The entire engine and transmission assembly sits on rails. Pull 4 pins, disconnect the driveshaft, attach extension rails, and the whole power plant slides out in 40 minutes. Field mechanics can replace a broken engine in less time than it takes German crews to access their transmission. This maintenance philosophy reflects Detroit's mass production mentality: design for replacement, not repair. German engineers optimize individual components to be repairable by skilled technicians with specialized tools. American engineers assume you'll have unskilled crews and no specialized tools, so they make entire assemblies interchangeable. In sustained combat operations, this difference becomes decisive. Captain Thomas Evans reports to the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion in May 1943. His unit will be the first to receive production M18s, the designation given to the standardized T-70 design. The battalion had trained for months on M3 gun motor carriages, essentially a 75mm gun mounted on a half-track. Compared to that improvised platform, the M18 represents a quantum leap in capability. The training regimen, developed at Camp Hood, Texas, emphasizes tactics that exploit the Hellcat's unique characteristics: speed and concealment over armor protection, shoot and scoot, never fight from fixed positions, use terrain to mask movement, hit from the flank. The doctrine explicitly states, the tank destroyer does not seek to trade shots with enemy armor. It seeks to ambush, destroy, and relocate before enemy forces can respond. This tactical philosophy runs counter to traditional armored warfare doctrine, which emphasizes firepower, superiority, and armor protection. German tank design prioritizes frontal armor thick enough to survive direct hits, allowing panzers to engage enemies from static positions. The M18 doctrine assumes you'll die if hit, so don't get hit. Be somewhere else before enemy guns traverse. The psychological demands of this doctrine are severe. Hellcat crews must accept that their survival depends on movement, not protection. The open-topped turret, which provides exceptional visibility but leaves crews exposed, becomes a tactical advantage rather than a vulnerability if you understand it correctly. You can see threats 360 degrees. You can identify targets faster. You can assess tactical situations more completely than buttoned-up German crews squinting through narrow vision ports. But this advantage only materializes if crews internalize the fundamental tactical principle. You are not a tank. You are not supposed to trade shots. You are a raptor strike from ambush, kill, vanish. Fight like a guerrilla, not a gladiator. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion receives 36 production M18 Hellcats in May 1944, just weeks before D-Day. Each vehicle bears the scars of modifications suggested during Aberdeen trials. Improved shock absorbers, enhanced turret traverse mechanisms, better crew stations. The Buick division of General Motors has incorporated feedback from Evans and his crews into production specifications, a rapid iteration cycle that German military procurement systems simply cannot match. Evans and his crews spend June conducting final training exercises in England. The M18s perform flawlessly in the relatively dry English countryside, but the real test will come in France, where terrain, weather, and German firepower will challenge every design assumption. The battalion loads onto transport ships in early July. Their destination, Utah Beach. Their mission, provide tank destroyer support to General Patton's Third Army as it breaks out from Normandy and drives toward Germany. July 31st, 1944. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion lands at Utah Beach. The Normandy breakout Operation Cobra is underway. American infantry has punched through German defenses, and now Patton's armor is racing through the gap toward Brittany. The M18s deploy immediately, attached to Combat Command A of the 4th Armored Division. The first combat engagement comes near Avranches. German forces are attempting to establish defensive lines to contain the American breakthrough. A platoon of M18s from C Company encounters a German column moving to reinforce the front, 3 half-tracks, 2 Panzer IV tanks, and supporting infantry. The engagement lasts 6 minutes. The Hellcats use their superior speed to flank the German position, placing themselves broadside to the enemy column. The 76mm guns fire from defilade positions 800 yards away. 2 Panzer IVs burn. The half-tracks scatter. The M18s relocate 300 yards to new firing positions before German return fire arrives. By the time German gunners acquire targets, the Hellcats are gone, repositioned, firing from a different angle. This tactical pattern shoot, scoot, reposition, shoot again becomes the 704th's signature approach. It's exhausting for crews, demanding constant situational awareness and split-second decision-making, but it works. The battalion advances through Brittany with minimal losses, systematically destroying German strongpoints that conventional armor would have to assault frontally. August 19th, 1944, Kummersdorf Proving Ground, Brandenburg, Germany. Oberst Wolfgang Fischer examines the captured American tank destroyer with professional curiosity. The vehicle arrived 3 weeks ago, recovered from a battlefield near Saint-Lô. It had been abandoned after track damage, relatively intact except for minor battle damage. Fischer has spent 20 years evaluating armored vehicles. He supervised trials of the Panzer III, the Panzer IV, and early Panther prototypes. He understands tank design at an intimate level, the compromises between armor, mobility, and firepower that define every successful fighting vehicle. This American machine violates principles he considered fundamental. The armor measurements are almost contemptuous. 25mm on the turret front, 12.7mm on the sides. A standard German 75mm anti-tank gun can penetrate this from 1,500 meters. A Panther's 88mm gun can punch through from 2,500 meters. This vehicle should not survive first contact with German armor. The engine intrigues him more, a 9-cylinder radial design producing 400 horsepower, similar to aircraft engines. The power-to-weight ratio is extraordinary, 23 horsepower per ton, compared to 15 for a Panther. This explains the reported speeds which Fischer initially dismissed as American propaganda, but now recognizes as accurate. But the most unsettling discovery comes during gunnery trials. The 76mm gun, while unable to defeat Panther frontal armor, demonstrates remarkable accuracy at long range. German testers fire at stationary targets from 800, 1,000, and 1,200 meters. The flat trajectory and high muzzle velocity produce first-round hit probabilities that exceed Panther performance at those ranges. The tactical implications. This vehicle isn't designed to fight Panthers frontally. It's designed to avoid frontal engagements entirely. The speed allows flanking maneuvers. The gun accuracy enables hits from angles where Panther armor is vulnerable. The minimal armor reduces weight, further enhancing mobility. It's a completely different design philosophy. Germans build tanks to control ground through superior firepower and protection. Americans build tank destroyers to control tempo through superior mobility and tactical flexibility. Fischer's report to the Waffenamt includes a sentence that will later prove prophetic. This vehicle represents American industrial capacity applied to tactical mobility. We should expect to see many of them. September 19, 1944, Haraucourt, France. The 4th Armoured Division has pushed across the Moselle River, driving toward the German border. But 5th Panzer Army has counterattacked, sending 3 panzer brigades, including the elite 113th Panzer Brigade, with newly arrived Panther tanks, to crush the American salient and drive them back across the river. Lieutenant Edwin Leiper's platoon of 4 M18s reaches Hill 246 at 07:45 hours. Captain William Dwight has ordered them to establish a blocking position overlooking the Metz-Strasbourg road, where German armor is reported to be moving. The morning fog is thick, reducing visibility to less than 50 yards. Leiper positions his vehicles in defilade, hull down behind the hill's crest, only turrets exposed. At 07:50, the fog shifts. Leiper sees it. A German tank emerging from the woods at the base of Hill 246. Then another, then 3 more. Panthers, the most dangerous tanks in the German arsenal. Frontal armor 120 mm thick, angled at 55 degrees. The M18's 76 mm gun has virtually no chance of penetration from this range and angle, but the Panthers are moving in column formation, presenting their thinner side armor, and they haven't spotted the Hellcats concealed on the hill crest. Leiper's training takes over. He ranges the lead tank 750 meters, well within effective range for side shots. He signals his platoon, "Engage on my command." 4 M18s fire simultaneously. The sound is a sharp, cracking roar higher pitched than the deep boom of German 88 mm guns. 3 Panthers erupt in flames. 1 armor-piercing round misses, but the reload is fast. The Hellcat crews achieve sustained rates of 15 rounds per minute, nearly double the Panther's rate of fire. The German column reacts with practiced efficiency. Turrets begin to traverse toward the American positions. But Panther turrets rotate slowly, hand-cranked, requiring 60 seconds for a full 180-degree traverse. The M18 turrets, driven by hydraulic systems, complete the same rotation in 20 seconds. American gunners track moving targets, adjust aim, fire again. Within 5 minutes, 5 Panthers are destroyed. 1 M18 takes a direct hit from a German tank that managed to acquire a target. The vehicle brews up instantly. The thin armor provides no protection against an 88 mm round. The crew bails out, 3 surviving, 2 killed by shrapnel. But the remaining 3 M18s are already relocating. Using terrain masking, they withdraw 300 yards to new positions. When the German column advances again, expecting to overrun destroyed American positions, they find empty ground. The Hellcats have vanished, repositioned, and are now firing from a completely different angle. This engagement, later analysed extensively by military historians, demonstrates the M18 doctrine in action. Superior mobility compensates for inferior armour. Rapid fire rate compensates for inability to penetrate frontal armour. Shoot and scoot tactics prevent the enemy from concentrating return fire. The mathematics of exchange ratios shift dramatically when one side refuses to fight the battle the other side prepared for. Over the next 3 days, the Battle of Haraucourt continues. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion destroys 39 German tanks, mostly Panthers, while losing 4 M18s destroyed and 3 damaged. The exchange ratio is almost 10-1. German commanders report that American tank destroyers are everywhere, appearing from unexpected angles, delivering devastating fire, then vanishing before countermeasures can be organized. At Kummersdorf, Oberst Fischer receives field reports from Aracourt. The numbers make no sense, according to conventional armored warfare theory. Heavily armored Panthers should dominate lightly armored American tank destroyers in direct combat. But the Americans are not fighting direct combat. They're fighting ambush warfare with industrial-age weapons. Fischer's subsequent report includes more urgent language. American M18 tank destroyers operating in Lorraine sector have achieved exchange ratios that suggest fundamental tactical advantages from mobility. Recommend immediate analysis of doctrine and countermeasures. But countermeasures require accepting that German tactical doctrine based on superior firepower and armor protection may be inadequate against an enemy who simply refuses to fight that kind of battle. This is a psychological barrier that German high command struggles to cross. How do you adapt when the enemy won't play by the rules you've mastered? December 19, 1944, Bastogne, Belgium. The German Ardennes offensive, later known as the Battle of the Bulge, is underway. Panzer divisions are punching through American lines, racing toward the critical road junction at Bastogne. If they seize the town, Allied lines will collapse. The 101st Airborne Division, paratroopers trained for assault operations, is ordered to defend the town. But they have almost no anti-tank weapons. The 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion, equipped with M18 Hellcats, receives emergency orders. Get to Bastogne, now. Lieutenant Colonel Clifford Templeton pushes his vehicles through 60 miles of chaos in less than 12 hours. One of the few documented cases where the M18's 55-mile-per-hour top speed proves tactically decisive. They arrive at Bastogne on the night of December 19th. 4 M18s are immediately dispatched to Neuville, a village north of Bastogne, where Team de Sobry, a mixed force of armour and paratroopers, is desperately trying to hold back the 2nd Panzer Division. The German force includes Panthers, Panzer IVs, and supporting infantry. Team de Sobry is outnumbered 3-1. December 20th, 0900 hours. German armour attacks Neuville in force. 30 tanks advancing through morning fog. The 4 M18s use the same tactics perfected at Aracourt. Position in defilade, wait for flank shots, engage, relocate. Over 2 days of fighting, those 4 Hellcats, supporting paratroopers, destroy over 20 German tanks. The exchange ratio, 5-1. 1 M18 is destroyed by a Panther that achieves a lucky shot through the fog. The psychological impact on German forces is severe. Tank commanders report American tank destroyers appearing from nowhere, firing, disappearing, reappearing somewhere else minutes later. It creates the impression of far larger forces than actually exist. One captured German officer reports, "We could not determine how many American tank destroyers opposed us. They seemed to be everywhere." Throughout the siege of Bastogne, the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion destroys approximately 40 German tanks while losing 6 M18s. The exchange ratio remains around 7-1, statistically extraordinary for a defensive engagement where German forces have numerical superiority. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. February 1945. Kummersdorf Proving Ground. The war is clearly lost. Soviet forces are less than 50 miles away. Allied bombers strike Berlin daily. But Oberst Fischer continues his technical evaluation work with methodical precision, because understanding enemy capabilities remains essential even in defeat. 3 captured M18 Hellcats now sit in various states of disassembly at the facility. 1 intact vehicle captured near Bastogne. 1 heavily damaged from Aracourt, useful for metallurgical analysis. 1 abandoned near the Rhine with mechanical failure, allowing complete examination of the drivetrain. Fischer's team has conducted comprehensive testing over 4 months. Armour penetration trials mobility assessments, mechanical reliability studies, gunnery accuracy measurements. The data contradicts German assumptions about American armored vehicle design in ways that are both revealing and humbling. The armor analysis confirms what Fischer suspected. The M18 is fundamentally indefensible against any German anti-tank weapon. At test ranges, a standard Panzerfaust, the handheld anti-tank weapon issued to infantry, penetrates the side armor at 50 meters. A 75mm anti-tank gun achieves penetration from 1500 meters at any angle. The thin armor that enables the vehicle's speed also makes it catastrophically vulnerable. But the mobility trials produce results that explain battlefield performance reports that German commanders initially dismissed as exaggerated. On Kummersdorf's test track, the captured M18 achieves 0 to 50 km per hour in 18 seconds. Maximum sustained cross-country speed exceeds 50 km per hour on rough terrain, where Panthers struggle to maintain 30. The acceleration is almost violent, more characteristic of sports cars than military vehicles. Major Hans Becker, a Panzer officer assigned to evaluate tactical implications, writes in his assessment, "The American vehicle treats mobility as primary armor. It survives not by withstanding hits, but by making itself a difficult target to acquire. This represents a fundamentally different tactical philosophy than German armored doctrine." The gunnery trials reveal the M18's most significant technical advantage. German testers fire the 76mm gun at various ranges, comparing performance to Panther and Panzer IV weapons. At 800 meters, the typical engagement range in European combat, the M18 achieves first-round hit probability of 78% against stationary targets. The Panther, with its longer, more powerful 88mm gun, achieves 62% at the same range. The difference lies in ballistics. The M18's high-velocity gun produces a flat trajectory that simplifies aiming. Gunners don't need elaborate range estimation or complex elevation adjustments. The round goes where you aim it within 1500 meters. For tank destroyer doctrine that emphasizes rapid engagement and immediate relocation, this simplified ballistics profile proves tactically decisive. Fischer's final report, completed in March 1945, includes an analysis that will later be studied extensively by post-war military theorists. The M18 succeeds because it optimizes for different variables than German tank design. Where we prioritize armor protection and frontal firepower, Americans prioritize tactical mobility and engagement flexibility. In defensive operations where static positions can be prepared, German tanks maintain advantages. In fluid, mobile warfare where rapid repositioning determines success, American tank destroyers achieve superior tactical outcomes. The report includes statistical analysis from multiple engagements. Aracourt. 39 German tanks destroyed, for 4 American tank destroyers lost. Bastogne. 40 German tanks destroyed for 6, American losses. Smaller engagements throughout the Ardennes and Rhineland show similar ratios. The aggregate data suggests kill-to-loss ratios consistently exceeding 8-1, but Fischer's analysis goes deeper, examining why these ratios occur. It's not that the M18 is superior in direct combat. A Panther that achieves first shot will win every engagement. The key is that M18 doctrine specifically avoids fair fights. American crews are trained to create tactical situations where they fire first from unexpected angles, then relocate before German forces can respond. This tactical approach exploits a vulnerability in German armor design: slow turret traverse. Panther turrets rotate by hand crank, requiring skilled crews and physical effort. Under combat stress, full traverse can take 60 to 90 seconds. M18 turrets, powered by hydraulic systems, complete full traverse in 20 seconds. In the time a Panther crew laboriously cranks their turret toward a target, the M18 has fired, relocated, and positioned for another shot. Major Becker's tactical assessment concludes with uncomfortable honesty. "We designed tanks to win the battles we expected to fight, frontal engagements emphasizing superior firepower and protection. The Americans designed tank destroyers to fight battles on their terms: ambush, maneuver, and rapid repositioning. They refused to fight the battle our equipment was optimized for, and our tactical doctrine provides insufficient countermeasures. March 1945. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion crosses the Rhine at Oppenheim. Germany's defensive lines are collapsing. The M18s, which entered combat less than a year ago, have become legendary within Third Army. Patton himself visited Captain Evans after Arracourt to personally commend the battalion's performance. The final months of the European War see the M18 employed increasingly in roles it wasn't designed for: direct infantry support, bunker destruction, urban combat. The thin armour that proved acceptable in mobile warfare becomes a severe liability in close-quarters fighting, where German Panzerfaust teams can approach within 50 metres. Sergeant James Mitchell, commanding an M18 in B Company, experiences this vulnerability firsthand during street fighting in a German town whose name he never learns. His vehicle advances down a narrow street, supporting infantry clearing buildings. A Panzerfaust team emerges from a basement, fires from 30 metres. The shaped charge warhead punches through the side armour like paper. 2 crew members die instantly. Mitchell and the driver bail out through the turret, both wounded. The incident exemplifies the M18's fundamental trade-off. In open terrain where crews can exploit mobility, the vehicle achieves remarkable survival rates. In constrained environments where maneuver is limited, the thin armour becomes catastrophically inadequate. The tank destroyer doctrine assumed mobile warfare. When forced into static infantry support roles, M18s die at rates comparable to any lightly armoured vehicle. Despite these losses, the aggregate statistics remain impressive. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion will end the war credited with destroying over 90 enemy armoured vehicles while losing approximately 12 M18s in combat. The 705th, which fought throughout Bastogne and the subsequent drive into Germany, destroys 87 German tanks and loses 9 Hellcats. These numbers represent the highest kill-to-loss ratios achieved by any American armoured unit in World War II, but they reflect more than just equipment performance. They represent the successful implementation of tactical doctrine that emphasized mobility over protection, speed over armour, and maneuver over frontal assault. April 1945. Soviet forces overrun Kummersdorf. Fischer and his team destroy sensitive documents and disable test equipment before evacuating. The captured M18s are left behind, along with the detailed technical reports that represent months of analysis. Soviet engineers will examine these vehicles and reports with great interest. The Red Army faces its own doctrinal questions about tank design, whether to prioritize the heavy armor of the IS-2 or the mobility of the T-34. The American approach offers a third option: extreme mobility with minimal armor, relying on tactical doctrine rather than steel plate for survival. But the M18 approach requires specific conditions to succeed: highly trained crews who internalize shoot and scoot tactics, excellent reconnaissance to identify ambush positions, combined arms coordination with infantry and artillery, command structures that permit initiative and tactical flexibility. Remove any of these elements, and the thin-armoured tank destroyer becomes a death trap. May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe. The M18 Hellcats' combat career in the European theatre ends with statistics that military analysts will debate for decades. Of the approximately 2,500 M18s produced, roughly 650 served in Europe. Combat losses totaled approximately 150 vehicles, a remarkably low attrition rate for offensive operations against a determined enemy. The vehicles destroyed an estimated 500 to 600 German armoured vehicles, including Panthers, Tigers, and Panzer IVs. The aggregate kill-to-loss ratio approximates 8-to-1 extraordinary by any measure of armoured combat effectiveness. For comparison, Sherman tanks achieved ratios closer to 1.2-to-1 in similar operations. But these statistics conceal important context. M18 battalions operated under specific doctrine that emphasized their strengths and minimized their weaknesses. They fought primarily in roles suited to their capabilities: mobile warfare, flanking operations, ambush tactics. When forced into urban combat or static defense, where mobility advantages disappeared, M18s suffered casualties comparable to any lightly armored vehicle. The success of the M18 program validated Andrew Bruce's original vision, that speed and tactical mobility could serve as effective armor in the right tactical context. But it also revealed the limitations of that philosophy. The vehicle excelled in fluid, mobile operations. It struggled in constrained environments or against massed infantry with anti-tank weapons. Post-war analysis by the United States Army examined why the M18 succeeded despite apparent vulnerabilities. The conclusions emphasized factors beyond equipment specifications: superior crew training, effective tactical doctrine, combined arms integration, industrial capacity that could replace losses rapidly. These systemic advantages allowed American forces to employ vulnerabilities as strengths, approaches that would have failed for armies lacking such resources. June 1945, Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion returns from Europe. Captain Thomas Evans, now promoted to Major, oversees the deactivation process. The M18s that survived the war will be placed in storage, their combat careers apparently over. Evans reflects on 11 months of combat from Normandy to the Czech border. He remembers the fog at Aracourt, the desperate fighting at Bastogne, the Rhine crossing, the final push into Bavaria. The M18 wasn't a perfect vehicle. Its thin armor haunted crews throughout the campaign, but it was the right vehicle for the war America actually fought: mobile, offensive operations emphasizing maneuver over attrition. The German evaluation reports from Kummersdorf, captured by Soviet forces and later shared with American intelligence, provide validation of what Evans experienced tactically. German engineers recognized the M18's effectiveness, but struggled to explain it within their doctrinal framework. How could a vehicle so vulnerable achieve such lopsided combat results? The answer lay in recognizing that the M18 and the Panther were designed to fight different battles. The Panther excelled in defensive operations, using superior frontal armor and long-range firepower to control terrain. The M18 excelled in offensive operations, using superior mobility and tactical flexibility to create favorable engagement conditions. In the war's final year, when Germany fought defensively and America attacked, the M18's design philosophy proved better matched to operational requirements. July 1946. The War Department completes its comprehensive study of tank destroyer effectiveness. The report examines combat performance data from all tank destroyer types: towed guns, M10 Wolverines, M36 Jacksons, and M18 Hellcats. The statistical analysis confirms what field commanders already knew. The M18 achieved the highest kill-to-loss ratios, despite having the lightest armor and, on paper, the least capable main gun. The study attributes this success to three factors. First, superior mobility enabled tactical advantages that compensated for protection and firepower limitations. Second, effective crew training ensured that doctrine was actually implemented rather than just written in manuals. Third, American operational tempo, the speed at which units could attack, reposition, and attack again maximized the M18's strengths while limiting opportunities for enemies to exploit its weaknesses. But the report also notes that M18 effectiveness declined sharply when employed outside its intended role. In urban combat, where mobility advantages disappeared, M18s suffered casualties comparable to other lightly armored vehicles. In static defensive positions, where shoot and scoot tactics were impossible, the thin armor became catastrophically inadequate. These limitations led to the tank destroyer force's gradual dissolution in the post-war period. The Korean War would see some M18s employed in fire support roles, but by the mid-1950s, the vehicle was obsolete. Advances in tank design, particularly the M48 pattern, provided mobility approaching the M18s while offering substantially better protection. Yet the M18's legacy extended beyond its service life. The vehicle demonstrated that tactical doctrine and operational employment could matter as much as raw specifications. A vehicle with 1 inch of armor achieved better combat outcomes than vehicles with 5 inches of armor because the entire system, training, doctrine, tactics, logistics was optimized to exploit its capabilities rather than lamenting its limitations. October 1947. Oberst Wolfgang Fischer, now working as a civilian consultant for the United States Army's Foreign Military Studies program, reviews his wartime reports on the M18 Hellcat. The Americans are systematically collecting German military analysis, seeking lessons for future conflicts. Fischer's assessment of the M18 included conclusions that American officers find particularly interesting. The vehicle succeeded not because of superior engineering, but because of superior systems integration. American industry produced the M18 rapidly. American training prepared crews effectively. American doctrine employed the vehicle appropriately. American logistics maintained it reliably. German tanks often possessed superior specifications, but German systems integration increasingly failed as the war progressed. This analysis points to a broader truth about the conflict. Germany optimized individual weapon systems. The Panther was objectively superior to the Sherman in most technical specifications, but America optimized the entire military system: training, logistics, doctrine, industrial production, replacement pipelines. When the entire system functions effectively, vehicles with inferior specifications can achieve superior tactical outcomes. The M18 embodied this systems approach. It wasn't the best tank destroyer in isolation, but, integrated into an effective military system, operated by well-trained crews, employed according to appropriate doctrine, and supported by robust logistics, it became devastatingly effective. December 1950. The Korean War brings some M18s out of storage for deployment with United Nations forces. The vehicles find limited employment. Korean terrain and tactical conditions don't favor the mobile warfare that defined European operations. Most M18s serve in indirect fire support roles, using their 76mm guns against bunkers and fortifications rather than enemy armor. But a few units employ M18s in their intended role, particularly during rapid advances following the Incheon landing. The vehicle's speed proves valuable in pursuit operations, where American forces seek to maintain pressure on retreating North Korean units. In these operations, the M18 briefly rediscovers its European effectiveness: rapid movement, quick strikes, immediate relocation. One engagement in September 1950 exemplifies this. A platoon of 4 M18s, supporting the 1st Marine Division's advance, encounters a North Korean tank unit withdrawing toward the Pusan perimeter. The American tank destroyers use classic shoot and scoot tactics, destroying 634 tanks while suffering no losses. The exchange ratio and tactical pattern mirror engagements from Europe 5 years earlier. But these successes are exceptions. The Korean War is primarily infantry combat in mountainous terrain, not the mobile armored warfare that the M18 was designed for. By 1953, most remaining M18s are withdrawn from Korea, their crews retrained on more modern vehicles better suited to the conflict's tactical realities. January 1957. The United States Army officially retires the M18 Hellcat from service. Some vehicles are sold to allied nations, Yugoslavia, Venezuela, China, where they continue serving for decades in secondary roles. But in American service, the tank destroyer concept itself has been abandoned. Future tanks will integrate anti-tank capabilities directly rather than maintaining specialized tank destroyer units. The reasons for abandonment are both doctrinal and technological. Doctrinally, post-war analysis questioned whether specialized tank destroyer units offered advantages over simply building better tanks. Technologically, advances in armor and firepower meant that modern tanks could perform tank destroyer missions without sacrificing protection. But the M18's combat record remained impressive. No other American armored vehicle in World War II achieved comparable kill-to-loss ratios. The statistics were undeniable, 8-1, sometimes higher in specific engagements. German evaluation reports from Kummersdorf confirmed American field assessments. The vehicle was devastatingly effective when employed according to its design doctrine. The question military historians continue debating is whether the M18's success proved the validity of the tank-destroyer concept or demonstrated the ability of skilled forces to succeed despite doctrinal limitations. The evidence supports both interpretations. The M18 performed brilliantly in roles it was designed for: mobile anti-armor operations in fluid combat. It struggled in roles it wasn't designed for: urban combat and static defense. Perhaps the most accurate conclusion is that the M18 succeeded because American forces were smart enough to use it appropriately. Tank destroyer battalions weren't forced into inappropriate roles simply because doctrine said they were tank destroyers. When tactical situations favored mobility and maneuver, M18s were employed aggressively. When situations required different capabilities, commanders requested different units. This tactical flexibility, the ability to employ forces according to actual conditions rather than doctrinal prescriptions, may have been more important than the M18's specifications. German forces often lacked this flexibility, employing Panther tanks in urban combat or defensive positions where their mobility advantages were wasted. American forces generally matched capabilities to missions more effectively. March 1978. The United States Army's Armor School at Fort Knox publishes a retrospective study of tank destroyer operations in World War II. The study examines whether specialized tank destroyer units were necessary or whether conventional tank units could have performed the same missions. The conclusion is nuanced. Tank destroyer doctrine successfully created units optimized for specific tactical situations. The M18 Hellcat, in particular, represented optimization taken to an extreme maximum mobility achieved through minimum armor. This optimization produced remarkable results when tactical conditions matched design assumptions. But optimization creates vulnerability to changing conditions. The same characteristics that made the M18 devastating in open terrain made it vulnerable in urban environments. A more balanced vehicle, more armor, less mobility, would have performed worse in ideal conditions, but better across diverse situations. The study notes that German forces faced similar dilemmas with their own specialized vehicles. The Jagdpanther tank destroyer offered excellent anti-armor capability, but struggled in infantry support roles. The Tiger tank dominated in defensive positions but proved too slow and mechanically complex for pursuit operations. Specialization creates advantages and disadvantages simultaneously. The M18's legacy ultimately rests on demonstrating that tactical doctrine and operational employment could matter more than raw specifications. A vehicle that any reasonable engineer would expect to fail 1 inch of armor facing 88mm guns instead achieved the highest combat effectiveness ratios of any American armored vehicle in the war. This outcome resulted from a system that functioned effectively at multiple levels. Industrial production delivered vehicles rapidly. Training prepared crews thoroughly. Doctrine guided employment appropriately. Logistics maintained readiness reliably. Combat leadership adapted tactics to actual conditions rather than rigid prescriptions. When all these elements aligned, even a vehicle with glaring vulnerabilities could achieve remarkable success. The German evaluation reports from Kummersdorf captured this reality in their conclusion. The M18 succeeds not because it is better than German tanks in individual specifications, but because American military systems integrate capabilities more effectively. We built superior vehicles. They built superior systems. In sustained operations, systems integration proved more decisive than vehicle specifications. This analysis, written by defeated German engineers examining captured American equipment, provides perhaps the most honest assessment of why the Allies won the armored warfare campaign. It wasn't that American tanks were better, often they weren't. It was that American systems for producing, training, maintaining, and employing armored forces functioned more effectively under the sustained stress of industrial-scale warfare. The M18 Hellcat embodied this system's approach. Paper-thin armor, an open-topped turret, a gun that couldn't penetrate heavy German armor frontally. By conventional analysis, it should have failed catastrophically. Instead, it achieved kill ratios that German engineers documented, analyzed, and reluctantly acknowledged in their technical reports from Kummersdorf. The title of this story suggested Germans admitted to never building anything with 19-to-1 kill ratios. The truth is more complex and more interesting. The aggregate statistics show kill-to-loss ratios ranging from 7-to-1 to 10-to-1, depending on specific engagements and accounting methods. German evaluation reports acknowledged these ratios in technical language, noting that American tank destroyers achieved tactically significant exchange ratios that German armored doctrine had not anticipated. The specific number matters less than the underlying reality. A vehicle with obvious severe vulnerabilities outperformed vehicles with superior specifications because the entire system supporting it functioned effectively. This lesson proved more valuable than any specific kill ratio statistic. Wars aren't won by individual weapon systems. They're won by nations that can integrate training, doctrine, logistics, production, and tactical leadership into coherent, effective military systems. The M18 Hellcat demonstrated that principle with stark clarity. It succeeded because America built not just a fast tank destroyer, but an entire military system optimized to employ fast tank destroyers effectively. Germany built better individual tanks. America built better military systems. In sustained industrial warfare, systems integration proved decisive. Lieutenant Edwin Leiper, who survived the war and later taught armor tactics at Fort Knox, summarized this lesson simply. The Hellcat wasn't a great tank destroyer because it had the best gun or armor. It was great because we knew how to use it. That's not a vehicle lesson, that's a systems lesson. And that's why we won. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe. The M18 Hellcat revolutionized tank warfare in World War II by abandoning traditional armor protection for unprecedented speed and mobility. With paper-thin armor but reaching 55 miles per hour, twice the speed of German Panthers, it achieved the highest kill-to-loss ratio of any American armored vehicle. Designed by General Bruce in 1941, the Hellcat's philosophy was radical. Don't survive hits, avoid them entirely. Its 76mm gun, simple maintenance, and shoot and scoot doctrine allowed crews to ambush, destroy, and relocate before enemies could respond. This Detroit-engineered tank destroyer proved that tactical mobility could trump German engineering's emphasis on armor thickness and firepower.